From the Sports Illustrated article, April 12th, 1976, by Ron Fimwright. He was a golden boy, and never had he glittered so brightly as on his wedding day. October 16th, 1949, Jackie Jensen was 22 years old. He was blonde and broad-shouldered. His body looked as if it had been sculpted instead of grown. He had been an All-American in football and baseball at the University of California, acclaimed as both the greatest running back in the school's history and the finest all-around athlete. The previous spring, the Golden Boy had signed an extraordinary $75,000 contract to play baseball with the Oakland Oaks in the Pacific Coast League. 4 days before the wedding, he and teammate Billy Martin had been sold to the Yankees for a reported $100,000. It was a dream realized, for in a few months, Jensen would be playing alongside his idol, Joe DiMaggio, in the Yankee outfield. Greetings and welcome to Productive Discourse. Productive Discourse is a conversation where we talk about the positive activities that take place within our communities. In other words, we're constantly searching for our shining needle of common ground in that haystack of fear. Today, we're continuing our conversation about the great athletes that got their starts in the playgrounds and sandlots of Oakland, California. We're talking about athletes that exhibited what I call the 3 E's: energy, enthusiasm, and excellence into their passion, where many of them turned pro and won championships. Some were elected to their sports halls of fame, and a great many came back and served their communities. Today, we're talking about the Golden Boy, Jackie Jensen, an Oakland Wildcat who went on to greatness with the University of California Bears and the Boston Red Sox. Jackie was a handsome groom in that beautiful wedding. Who was the beautiful bride? The beautiful bride was Zoe Ann Olsen. Ron Fimwright writes that she shone almost as brightly as he. She was only 18, but she had won 14 national diving championships and a silver medal in the 1948 Olympics. She was blonde and intelligent and as pretty as he was handsome. The San Francisco Chronicle called them the sports world's most famous sweethearts. Together, they looked like a Nordic god and goddess. I'm going to quote some sources today. The first source I'm going to quote is Home Field Advantage, Oakland, California, the city that changed the face of sports, by Paul Brecky-Meisner. I'm also going to quote 2 Sports Illustrated articles. In addition to the April 12th, 1976 Fear of Flying article by Ron Fimwright, on June 23rd, 1958, Roy Terrell published The All-Star Who Can Do Without Glory. And then on April 4th, 1959, in the Saturday Evening Post, Jackie Jensen penned his own article called My Ambition is to Quit. Jackie Jensen had a rough childhood growing up in Oakland. His father abandoned the family. His mother went to work in a warehouse and worked incredibly hard. He saw her only in the evenings and on Sundays. And he says, I still remember watching her, dragging herself in after a long day's work, and then going about getting dinner ready for us kids. As tough as it was, Jackie was a popular kid at Oakland High, and he was elected class president. On the baseball field and the gridiron, his talents were off the charts. He's the only person to ever be All-American in baseball and football, play in a college and Major League World Series, play in a Rose Bowl, and win a Most Valuable Player in a major league. That College World Series, it was 1948. In that series, there's an iconic picture future president, George H.W. Bush, captain of the Yale Bulldog baseball team, posing for a picture with Babe Ruth. That was a World Series that Jackie Jensen was a star, and he helped the Cal Bears beat the Yale Bulldogs and win that World Series. The good news after that, the wedding with Jackie and Zoe Ann, was they had their lives all mapped out for them. The bad news was Jackie and Zoe Ann had their lives mapped out for them by other people's expectations. The first expectation people have after a beautiful wedding is that the couple's going to start a family. And that they did. They had 3 beautiful children, Jan, John, and Jackie, and settled in Crystal Bay, Nevada, which is near Lake Tahoe. Jackie played that year with the Oakland Oaks, and then he went on to the New York Yankees. He actually competed for the job with Mickey Mantle to replace the great Joe DiMaggio, who was planning on retiring at the end of the 1951 season. Mantle won the job, and Jackie was traded with no bitterness or hard feelings to the Washington Senators. And then the Washington Senators traded him to the Boston Red Sox, where he thrived. In the mid to late 50s, he had some great years, culminating in 1958 when he won the American League Most Valuable Player Award. As he went through his baseball career, though, there were some curveballs. The biggest curveball that changed Jackie Jensen's life was when he was on an all-star team, barnstorming through Japan. He and his teammates were on a flight, and on that flight, they were about to land. And all of a sudden, the pilot shot the plane upward. As Jackie looked out the window, he saw another plane. They had just had a near miss. From that point on, Jackie Jensen was scarred for life with an intense fear of flying that caused an anxiety that lasted the rest of his life. Now, the Boston Red Sox were sensitive about this. They got him as much help as they could. But on the other side of the coin, from the beginning of time, baseball players have been known for their pranks. And his teammates would pull pranks on him. A good example is during that trip, it got to the point that Jackie had to take tranquilizers to fly. And he would sleep through the flights. Well, there was this one flight where his buddy, Billy Martin, woke him up. He shook him. And when Jackie woke up, he saw Billy Martin wearing a life jacket. Jackie, I don't mean to disturb you, and there's nothing to worry about, but we're going to crash. Jackie said, I wanted to kill him. He looked for help everywhere. He ended up by forming a great friendship with a nightclub hypnotist named Arthur Ellen. And Arthur and Ellen actually helped him a little bit. And they were friends for the rest of Jackie's life. There were also the marital problems. And most of the marital problems came from the separation during the baseball season. Jackie was torn by his professional obligations and having to spend the baseball season basically from February till October, living 3,000 miles away from Zoe and the kids. Kids would have accidents. One of them would break their leg. Zoe might get sick and have to be taken to the doctor. Jackie was frustrated because it was always a neighbor with good intentions handling the emergencies that he felt he should be handling. This just added to the anxiety that he already had with the fear of flying. But his life was all mapped out. There were all these expectations from other people. Have you ever lived thinking about other people's expectations for you? That's what Jackie and Zoe had to live with for their whole life. And all added to that, because of his childhood trauma, nothing seemed more catastrophic to him than another broken home. He spent much of the 1950s crying for help. In that article that Terrell wrote in 1956, Jackie frankly admitted that when he signed his first baseball contract, he wasn't looking for thrills. He said, "I had all the glory I wanted, and I knew I was never going to be a great star." I think those who are know it, even when they first break in. I'm sure Ted did, meaning Ted Williams. But he has to admit there have been thrills. And Jackie said, nevertheless, the biggest, he said, is simply having played in the same outfield with DiMaggio and Williams. You can't be more blunt than he was in the Saturday Evening Post article. "My ambition is to quit." Jackie wrote that he's going to play only until he has a nest egg that is large enough to retire. "And then I'm going to get out of baseball. I mean, totally out. I don't want to be a manager, a scout, a coach, a farm director, general manager, traveling secretary, league president, commissioner, or bat boy. I want to get out." Ron Fimwright wrote, quote, "I've grown up determined that no matter what happened, my children would have the benefit of a home life that I couldn't have." Jackie Jensen was tormented by the fact that he could not be home full time. Zoe Ann was also open with the press. In the 1956 article, she says, "I used to try to cope with all the separation by moving right along with him. Twice when we were traded, I drove to the new place, complete with the kids. I used to sit for 36 hours behind the wheel just because it's easier than stopping when you have children. I gave that up. Now I fly." Jackie left after the 1956 season, but the damage was done. He and Zoe Ann got a divorce in 1963. They tried to reconcile, remarried, but then got divorced for the final time in 1968. Arthur Ellen, the nightclub hypnotist, said that Jackie's problem has never been a fear of flying. The fear of flying was merely a subterfuge. Jackie needed the fear as an excuse to get home and patch up his marriage. After his baseball career, he coached the University of Nevada and then went back to Cal and coached their baseball team. I have a high school friend from Alameda named Kevin Kearney, who actually played under Jackie Jensen in the 1970s. And I'm going to let Kevin tell a good story here.
So basically, with Jackie, I mean, he arguably is the greatest athlete that ever played at Cal. Mm-hmm. And the reason being, he was in the Rose Bowl. He was the MVP of the 1954 season for the American League with the Boston Red Sox. He was a great major league player. And I mean, that his credentials stand alone. And his fear of flying, I have to say, it did impact the time that I mean, he was the coach at Cal baseball. I believe I was there in 75 and 76. He was there in 74, and I believe he did 1977 as well. And that was it. And his persona, he was a pretty nice guy off the field. but on the field, he was a bit aloof. And I can illustrate his great athleticism and his lack of maybe coaching strategy or connection with his players in this one story. We're playing USC when I was a senior, and we had a pretty good team. We had a very good hitting team. And so we were playing SC, and it was at home, and it was like the bottom of the 8th inning, and we were losing the game either 2-1 or 3-2. It was a one-run game. And so we got our number 7 and our number 8 batter on base to start off the bottom of the 8th. In a normal situation with your number 9 batter, you would bunt the ball. But we don't bunt the ball. It's like we don't bunt it. Guy hits into a double play, leadoff batter strikes out. We don't score. We lose 3-2. Mm-hmm. And so it was very puzzling because our team was good and we were kind of battling to, we weren't at the top. UCLA was, but back then they didn't have as many playoff spots and those kinds of things. And basically you had to win your league. But we were very, very competitive, especially at this point in the season. So on Monday, we come out to practice. Jackie comes out, and we all stop, and he says, okay, go out to your positions. And I was the first baseman. And everybody goes out, and he takes one of our, league pitchers, our number 2 pitcher, a guy named Jeff Gleed, who was, I don't know, he was probably about 6'1", about 180. And I want to say that he threw about 90. I mean, he threw hard. And back then, throwing 90 is like throwing 96 or 97 now. Mm-hmm. Guys just didn't throw that hard. And so he puts him on the mound and he goes, okay, Jeff, warm up a little bit. I want you to throw me some pitches. And I'm going to hit this ball out the left field. So Jeff throws the ball, a BP pitch, maybe 70 miles an hour. Jensen crushes it to left field. He's about 52 years old at the time, too. So he crushes it out there, and he steps out, and he's arrogant, and he goes, "No, Jeff." He goes, "Come on, throw the ball, throw it." And Gleed kind of looks at him, and he goes, "Okay." So he goes, "This one's going out to center field." And Gleed humps it up a little bit more, and Jensen crushes it to center field. Bam, on the line, right where he said he was going to hit it. And he goes, "Gleed, I told you to throw a fastball." So now Gleed is sitting, okay, no problem. So he rears back and probably throws a 90-mile-an-hour fastball right across the letters. And before Jensen steps back in, he goes, I'm going to hit this ball to right center. He drills the ball to right center. It's a laser beam. We're all standing there going, what is this, Jack? What are we doing now? He stops. He goes, when I was playing, Frank Malzone would get a hit, Ted Williams would get a hit, and I would knock them both in. And he goes, fellas, baseball is a very simple game. He flipped the bat up in the air, walked right off the field, and we didn't see him till the next practice.
If only Jackie had some eligibility left, he could have been the pinch hitter. Unfortunately, Jackie died at a very young age. He passed away at the age of 55 in 1982. 2 years later, in 1984, he was posthumously elected to the College Football Hall of Fame. What did I learn about Jackie Jensen? Well, actually, I learned a lot about Jackie Jensen and Zoe Ann. I believe that they were both good, decent people that just struggled to manage their lives around other people's expectations. By the time Jackie was 22, he had all the attention, adulation, and admiration most of us get in a lifetime. From then on, it was other people's expectations. I also completed this research about Jackie and Zoe Ann with a lot of questions about Zoe Ann. She won the silver medal at the age of 18 in the 1948 Olympics. How would her life have been different if she won the silver medal in the 2020 Olympics? Oh, there would have been other people's expectations. Her life would have been mapped out. But how would it have been different? Well, that's what we're going to talk about next week. Next week's subject for Productive Discourse is going to be Zoe Ann Olsen, the diver who won the silver medal. So I hope you enjoyed today's program. If you'd like to know more about Productive Discourse, please go to productivediscourse.home.blog. You'll get great information about all of our activities and how you can contact me if you'd like me to speak at your service club, community organization, your religious group, or your Toastmasters club. So come back again next week for an episode about Zoe Ann Olsen. But in the meantime, please like, share, comment, subscribe, so this message will go far and wide, and we'll find that shiny needle of common ground in that haystack of fear.